All right, everyone, welcome back to the show. We are in the midst of answering listener questions, which you can always send to us on our social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We don't have a TikTok, do we yet, Shannon? I
Not
said
yet, but if you're ready to learn some dance
Nope,
moves, we can
nope,
make it happen.
nope, too old. Can't do that. But send us your questions on all the other platforms. And then also to gettingin.voiceamerica@gmail.com. We've got a lot more admissions than finance questions today. So you've got another admissions question you want to throw my way, right, Shannon?
I sure do. And this was from Kelly. She sent to us on Instagram. I am a high school counselor trying to help some of my seniors navigate the decisions they have received. One of our larger state schools has waitlisted a large number of my students, which is highly unusual for our school. They are telling my students that they will notify them of a decision about the waitlist by May 31st. But the deposit deadline is May 1st. Many of them have gotten offers to other state schools, but prefer the one that they are waitlisted to. I'm trying to help them walk through the decision of when and where and how to deposit. But how does all of this actually work? If they deposit at one school and get an offer to the school they are waitlisted on after May 1st, what can they do? Is there any disadvantage to waiting until the last minute to deposit other than dorm placement?
Yeah, this is such an important question. We get it all the time from families. I think it's really tough to figure out because it kind of feels like you've got one deadline that comes before you have all the information that you need to have. And that's the nature of the wait list, right? Fundamentally, the wait list is to help colleges who come in under their enrollment targets and need more students, but they don't know that they're under their enrollment targets until May 1st, definitively. So they can't go to their wait list until after their own deadlines have passed. So it's this really funky circumstance where they're essentially poaching students that have enrolled at other places, and that's just part of the waitlist process.
Right.
Now, what does this mean for an individual student? If you are on the waitlist at a school, the first question you have to answer is, do I want to accept a place on this waitlist or not? You don't have to, but if you do, if you are interested in potentially receiving an offer later on down the road, you say yes, you return the information to them, and they know that they can call you if a spot opens up. Now, what I want you to do is essentially forget about that school. I want you to ignore the waitlisted school. They don't need further research on your part. You don't need to contact them in any regard. You can just accept that place on the wait list and wait to hear from them. Now, sometimes I think that students do want to send a letter that says, hey, it remains my number one choice. I don't need financial aid if I get an offer, et cetera, et cetera. And I think if that's something that you really want to do because it's a top choice of yours, I'm all for it. Go ahead and send them that note. But after that initial communication has happened, that's when you've got to start thinking about the schools that have actually made offers for you.
Right.
And that's where the advising for these students comes into play. So Kelly, I think you want to tell your students, we got to think about the schools that you've been admitted to and which one you want to go to. So we're going through the normal process like any other student would. You're going to go ahead and research those schools, maybe visit campus, and then place that enrollment deposit. You could wait until April 30th if you wanted to do so. Again, the only real drawback there is that you might miss out on priority housing. That's totally up to the student. And I think it's a cost benefit analysis where, if you deposit earlier, you might forfeit that deposit if you get in off a wait list. That's usually about $300 or $400. If you wait, you might have more opportunity to consider a waitlist offer, but you don't get preferential treatment in terms of the housing enrollments. So I think each family is going to be different in terms of how they evaluate that.
Right.
What I often find, Shannon, excuse me, is that if students are offered a space off the waitlist in late May, by then they've already forgotten about the school that's offering them that space. By then they're already in the social media groups for the schools they're going to. They've already met other students. They're excited. They've bought the sweatshirt, and this other school comes along and says, hey, we'd like to offer you a spot off the wait list. And most students will say, no, I'm good.
Yep. Yeah.
And so I think the reason that I want students to get so confident about where they actually enroll is because the likelihood of that call coming from the wait list is pretty low.
Yeah.
It just necessarily, it's going to be a very, very small percentage of the students who are even put on the wait list that ultimately get a call. This happened to me. I was like, maybe Dartmouth is going to call. And it wasn't until June that they sent me a postcard that said, we're releasing you from our wait list. And then I was like, oh, I forgot about
Forgot
that.
all about you.
Forgot. Yeah. So, so I think that that's something that it's hard to navigate in the initial phase of getting that information.
Yeah.
But I think it gets a lot clearer as time goes on.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into a finance question for you. Where the heck did I put this thing? Oh, right. There it is. Okay. Another question coming from YouTube. This one's from Carolyn, and it just came like 8 days ago. So it's really recent. I'm a retired parent, congratulations, and draw on my retirement account. She's also wants to say she's retired federal government, and she receives a monthly pension. It seems the CSS profile wants the total current balance in my TSP.
Thrift savings plan. That's the federal government, like 401k.
Gotcha. So the CSS wants to know the current balance in her retirement account and the calculated net worth of her pension. I looked how to calculate the net worth of my pension, and a $70K per year pension calculates out to around $2.5 million net worth over the lifetime disbursement. Am I understanding right that I have to calculate the rest of my life net worth of my pension and add that to the total value of my TSP? Very specific question, but I'm interested in this answer because it seems like this is a tough circumstance for Carolyn to be in as a retired federal government.
Though also a great circumstance that she has a nice pension coming of $70,000 a year that you and I and most people don't have these days. Those pension plans are few and far between. And so that is the reason that, Carolyn, you're correct in your analysis that this is exactly what the CSS profile is asking you to do, to estimate the sort of future value of these pension plan payments you'll be receiving for your lifetime. And I did sort of quick back of the envelope math, and I think her estimates are about right. So it's a good chunk of change that she will be reporting on the CSS profile. That's the bad news. The good news, other than the fact that she's receiving this pension, is that it probably will not matter. This is a confusing part about the CSS profile, about the financial aid process in general. We often say, do not report your retirement accounts. And that is absolutely accurate as far as the FAFSA goes, the main financial aid application that every college uses, but some colleges require this additional form called the CSS profile, where they do ask you about your retirement accounts. So families naturally get confused. You do have to report the value of your retirement accounts and any pensions on the CSS profile, but they do not feed into the financial aid calculations. They are asked for sort of informational purposes in the unusual circumstance where a family otherwise looks very poor, but they have millions upon millions of dollars in their retirement accounts. In that very unusual circumstance, a college might choose to consider those retirement assets to be available to pay for college and sort of manually feed them into the financial aid calculations. 99% of the time, even though you report the amounts of the retirement accounts, they do not affect the financial aid calculations whatsoever.
So it's a professional judgment kind of circumstance. I think,
that's exactly
am I right that like Jeff Bezos makes like $1 a year from Amazon in salary or something like that?
I think so. Yeah.
So he would qualify for full need-based financial aid through the FAFSA, right? Because it's an income-driven formula, unless he sells stock in that particular year, which would be income.
Right. That's exactly right.
So a school that has the profile might say, "Hey, Jeff Bezos, we know you only make $1 a year, but we think you can afford to pay for the full tuition, and we're not going to give you any need-based aid."
100%. Yeah. Okay. So Jeff Bezos would not do well with the CSS profile school. Carolyn, you're probably fine.
Great. That's how I want it to be.
Yes. That is the world works well every once in a while. All righty. So Ellen asks, thanks so much for your podcast. It has been really helpful to me. I have a question for the show if you think it might be a good one to address. And we do. Yeah. My daughter has fallen in love with a school where she is significantly above the GPA and ACT range for admitted students. It is a less selective state institution with a 78% acceptance rate. Awesome. How should we advise her to build her list of additional colleges, given that she is very likely to be admitted? This particular school offers early action, but not early decision. our initial thought would be to find a few schools which are similar to or less selective than this particular school. Does she need a reach school?
No
I vote
way.
no.
No way.
No.
No. Why? What
Yeah,
for? I love this. This is so
too.
great. Just like what an awesome circumstance. This is like, you know that the person you want to ask to the dance is going to say yes.
It's really into you. Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's great. You don't have to
That's
be like,
good
wait, I
news.
want to see if I can ask somebody else, right? Like, this is fantastic news.
Yeah.
I think it's how we hope that the admission process works for everybody, is that you fall in love with a school that really wants you, you really want them. It's a fantastic match, and you're very happy. I wanted to bring you in on the answer to this question though, because I think that there are potentially some circumstances where having multiple offers of financial aid could be helpful in a negotiation circumstance. And so if you just apply to this one school, I think you can't ever apply to only one college. I think you want to have 2 or 3 schools just to hedge against things going completely haywire.
Happen.
Yeah, it could happen. And I would make sure that the other 2 schools are similarly selective, so that they can also be treated as essentially safety schools. But it feels like it would be good to have a couple of other financial aid offers in hand to be able to go to that school and say, hey, we got these other offers. We'd like to negotiate our aid package here. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that it could be. The only hesitation that I have is she mentions that this is a less selective state university.
Yeah.
State universities in general tend to be less amenable to negotiation.
Okay.
So I think that if she doesn't want to go through the effort of applying to a whole bunch of other schools, just to get negotiating material when the negotiation unlikely to be successful anyway, probably not absolutely necessary. I have seen some successful negotiations at state universities. It's less common than at private schools, but it does happen. So I think that that's a fair point, Ian, that maybe she wants to throw a couple more schools on the list where, again, she's sort of a standout student, very likely to be admitted, likely to be offered some merit scholarships, other than the time and energy it takes to put in into the applications to these schools, which she may decide may or may not be worth it. Doesn't hurt to have a little negotiating material in your back pocket. So yeah, I think that that's something she might want to consider. She could decide for or against, but I think that should be a consideration. All
right, that sounds great. We are just about out of time. I wonder if we can grab that last question from Mayor.
Mayor, absolutely. I am an 8th. Oh, and this is from a student, not a parent, which I love. And a very young student. I am an 8th grader, so I will be going to 9th grade in a few months. I very recently started listening to this podcast, and I would like to know a few episodes that you think are most important, will catch me up, and that you think I should listen to.
I think all of the episodes that you should listen to are still yet to be done. We go through cycles every year where we return to the important stuff like wait lists and what to do with waitlist decisions. In fact, for next week's episode, we are talking about what happens if you didn't get in, what to consider as a reapplicant for next year. That's something I think we've probably covered on the show before, but we always update that content with new and relevant information depending on what's happening in the landscape of admission and college finance. Things like public service loan forgiveness could change. There might be entirely different policies. So I don't want to send you back in time to listen to old shows. I just want to invite you to join us here every week for our new shows. We've got a lot of really exciting things happening in the coming future. And internally, we've got, I want to say thanks, Shannon, to Lauren Randall, who has been our longtime producer of the podcast behind the scenes and has done just an awesome job of coordinating guests and coming up with topic ideas. And she's now taking on some new roles within our team. And so now we've got Jennifer Simons, who I think is a lot of people's favorite guest on the show, who's going to be stepping in to do production work for us. So it's an exciting change, and we'll see what Jennifer's version of the show looks like. Is it kind of like a darker Christopher Nolan, like edgier, getting in a college coach conversation?
Things are going to get wild, so tune in.
I think so. All right. Well, that does it for this week. We are excited to welcome you back next week when Beth will be hosting again. We'll talk about AP and IB classes alongside that, what to do if you didn't get in, and even some goal setting conversations on saving for college, which I think would be great for Mayor as an 8th grader coming into 9th grade. So thanks, Shannon, for being here. And thank you all for listening. We'll see you again next week.